Welcome back. This is lesson 6, which is the second part of 2 lessons for defining and healing emotional eating, especially as it leads to overeating. In lesson 5, the one before this, we defined what emotional eating is, and I gave some examples for how it tangibly shows up. I hope you were able to use the action guide to define and capture exactly how it shows up in your daily or weekly eating life. Now let's move into the second part, which is how to heal and end emotional eating so you no longer emotionally eat, leading to overeating. Before I dive into the process, I want to give a quick shout back to where I define the differences between binge eating and overeating. If you are binge eating, which is more intense and severe than just overeating, please know that the healing process we're about to head into is very relevant for the road to healing binge eating as well. So please engage with this process with big ears and an open heart. Okay, so we start with step 1, which is acceptance. To illustrate the process for healing and ending emotional eating, let's use a client case study that I'll keep referring back to as we go. Carrie's 42 years old, is married, and has 2 kids under 10. She's a nurse and had about a 30-pound weight gain since her first child. She didn't have much time for exercise, even though she used to love to exercise a lot before having her kids. In addition to the troublesome weight gain, she had some other physical health complaints as well, related to back pain and severe mood swings. Carrie came to me as a self-diagnosed overeater, just like Debbie did in the client example from the lesson on social overeating. Carrie told me that she'd often overeat when she came home from her nursing shift. So it didn't happen much during the shift, as she was eating just normal size meals and she wasn't snacking or eating mindlessly. And she also didn't overeat when she was with her husband or out in a social eating situation. Her overeating happened when she came home from work, and in her description, it was emotional. However, at the same time that we started working together, she had a hard time telling me what the emotions were that triggered her eating. She just wasn't that aware. And that's common. Sometimes you can't name the emotions right away, but you know the eating is not about hunger or even real taste cravings. Instead, it's coming as a result of or in reaction to your own internal state. So the first thing that needed to happen for Carrie, and I would suggest that this be your first step as well, is that she needed permission to be where she was. For Carrie, permission to be where she was meant to, first of all, accept that emotional eating was real and painful for her right now. Accept it instead of ignoring it or deciding it was hopeless to ever change it or thinking it would miraculously stop. Second, accept that it was okay that she couldn't directly name her troublesome feelings yet, nor did she have a ton of insight into why they were there in the first place. And third, to accept that she didn't know exactly how it was all going to end yet, but that she was ready to be on the path to bring attention to it and try. For you, this leads us back to our acceptance lesson from step 3, lesson 2. In that lesson, I break down what acceptance really means and how to use it and invite it in. There's also a guided healing meditation to help you take in that energy and really anchor into it. Well, I'm mentioning it again here because the first step of acceptance is the crucial first step to healing your emotional eating. Think about it like this. Do you think you can end your emotional eating and create an entirely new relationship with food and your body if you're struggling against, bracing against, and hating and resisting what's real and true right now in this moment? I think that's hard to do. And because I've never witnessed a client who was able to skip this step and be successful, and neither have I personally, that's why I'm starting here. So instead, can you surrender to the reality that emotional eating could be the eating behavior that's the biggest culprit to your weight gain or imbalanced health, instead of absolutely hating it? Can you be open to the idea that maybe it's here for a reason, and it is the exact teacher you need right now to learn and grow into your greatest self? Because once it transforms, you're going to learn through that process exactly what you need to learn to be that much more happy, powerful, and feeling like you. So, can you accept it? This is step 1 in the healing process to end emotional eating. My suggestion is to pause here and go back and review lesson 2 from step 3. Look at your answers in your action guide for that lesson, and then apply the concept specifically to your emotional eating right now. So if emotional eating is all about eating because of feelings or emotions, then guess what's the next thing to do? It's to know what those emotions are waving through your cells. It was hard for Carrie to do this the first time I asked her and began to guide her into this process to name her emotions. And it might feel challenging at first for you too. But if you stick with this, you will get there. To identify those feelings, let's talk about what I call the primary emotions. These emotions or feelings are the main ones that surface and get experienced regularly. Like I mentioned in the previous lesson, we tend to have this small little inner circle of emotions that become our familiar best friends. For example, in the height of my food war, my primary emotions were despair, disgust, and anger. For despair, I often felt hopeless that I would ever get what I truly wanted. What I wanted with my body and fat loss, with my health, with my career, everything. Anger, I was angry at the world. I was angry at people in my life, and I was angry at many different situations. I was angry that I wasn't where I wanted to be at the time, and disgusted with myself for that and for my eating. During that phase of my food war, I often went to bed knowing I had grossly eaten too much that day, often with binge eating included, and that just fueled the disgust for the next day. So these 3 primary emotions of despair, anger, and disgust just kept coming and circling for me over and over. Now, of course, in any moment I could have been experiencing other feelings as well that led me to emotionally eat, but it's a good place to start to identify your inner circle of emotions that regularly show up to the table. So using your action guide, can you identify what yours are? And don't overthink it. Use your gut and use your feeling body more than your head. Which 1 to 3 feelings keep coming up regularly? Maybe daily, maybe weekly. Which are the ones that you're most scared to feel? That's a good way in to identify them. I love that question. Think about the most familiar emotions you feel that might be tied to your unwanted overeating experiences. Take a second and just breathe into that. In the action guide, there's a comprehensive resource list of emotions to help you check in with this. So just read them one by one and identify those that quickly resonate as a yes. Yes, that is a consistent, familiar state for me. You can also note if they're there sometimes, but maybe they don't qualify for that inner circle. Take a moment now and do this exercise. It will greatly help you later. Since you now understand step 1, which is acceptance, and you've done step 2, which is to name your inner circle of emotions, we now get into the juicy bit of transforming emotional eating to no longer be a victim to it. Please know that the real magic of breaking an emotional overeating cycle happens not now while we're talking about it and you're learning concepts, but rather it happens in the moment when you're in it, when it's about to happen. The first 2 steps are super important precursors to ensure that what I'm about to teach you now happens successfully. This 3rd step is the hardest step because the way through, the way to ultimately not be a victim to eating because of your emotional state and break that feeling to food connection, which is what this whole process is about, is to do the thing you don't really want to do in the first place, which is to feel the feeling. The way through is to feel what you don't want to feel or are trying to avoid feeling. But there's more to this than just feel the feeling, right? Because if it were that easy, you'd be doing it naturally without any struggle. And we wouldn't be here talking about your food and weight issues. The differentiator here that's going to make a huge difference for you and be the magic in ending emotional eating is learning how to feel your feelings and, most importantly, how to process your emotions in a healthy, natural, honoring of yourself, more peaceful, and not full of struggle way. Without a doubt, a huge reason that my emotional eating raged for so long was because I was so incredibly scared to feel any feeling. So I did everything in my power not to. And I had no idea how to process a feeling once it was being felt. No one taught this skill to me growing up, and I definitely didn't have good role models for it around me. I truly believe that feeling and processing our emotions is one of the scariest things we have to do in life. It takes enormous courage to say, yes, I want to do this. I want to dive in and feel everything I feel, and then learn how to process those feelings in a way that truly helps me. Ironically, this skill of feeling and processing, and it is a skill, is the thing that's most often not taught to us by our wise elders. I sure didn't have parents or teachers or mentors who taught this to me when I was younger. So the irony is that it's such a crucial life skill, yet it so often is missing from our education. It's kind of like accounting. Why did no one teach me how to balance a checkbook in high school? That would have been a nice life skill to have learned at 16 instead of 36. Anyway, the good news is that when you do learn to feel and process emotion peacefully and healthfully, the need for an outside substance like food or alcohol or any other outside substance that assists in altering your state goes away. The need to have a substance change our state so we feel better, so we don't feel something painful, goes away, or at least massively lessens, when we're dealing right with the root problem, which is the desire to not feel a feeling. This is exactly what I call breaking the feeling to food connection. Emotional eating is eating because of or in response to a feeling. To break that connection and never again use food as a tool, we must address and face head-on the heart of the problem, which is the feeling. You know, it's been humbling and fascinating now in my years of professional life to see the same patterns I experienced in so many other women. As a collective, we're scared to feel. We get really freaked out when an intense or regularly bothersome feeling is there, and we simply don't know how to healthfully process emotions once they're there. So really, we're not all that different. Our issues are pretty common across the board, and I've just found that to be a somewhat comforting thought as the years have gone on. So once you learn this process of feeling and processing, and with practice get to the place of mastering it and using it every day with ease, it not only leads the way to ending emotional eating, but it's truly one of those life skills that you'll take with you to help every other area of your life. So back to our process. It's step 3, and this is where the healing process must be brought right into the moment you're about to start to emotionally eat. This is the moment that you start to feel off. For Carrie in the case study, this moment was often soon after she walked in the door from her day at the hospital. You know this moment if eating emotionally is a pattern for you. Don't second guess it. Just be there and be with it. So here you are in the crucial moment where you're starting to feel off. And I'm about to give you a lot of info in detail with this process, so just take it slow and take it in chunks. You may even want to re-watch this section of the video a few times. Here's the process for what to do in the moment, which is step 3, our final step of processing emotion. First, you need to stop. Acknowledge the sign that you're there in the moment. That sign or barometer is usually when you find you've shifted into some kind of more negative state. 5, 10, 20 minutes ago, you were neutral and fine. Now, something's just a little off. Something's a little different. Get used to catching this. You can only do this with a high level of presence with yourself and starting to get to know what that feels like, what that sign is. Second, take a breath and ask the magical question, what am I feeling? And then name that emotion. Completing the previous step 2 of the end emotional eating process, which was to name your inner circle of emotions, will hopefully really help you now in this moment. Previously getting familiar with that inner circle can quickly help you identify exactly what you're feeling now. Now, of course, in any particular moment that you may be drawn to emotionally eat, you could be feeling a different emotion than one of them you previously identified as being in your inner circle, and that's fine too. Your job in this part of the in the moment plan is to just name the feeling now, or multiple feelings now, that are there in this moment that you're starting to feel off. To do this well, be sure to answer the question of what am I feeling with a word and not a situation. For example, do answer the question with, I feel sad, I feel lonely, I feel angry. Those are all words. Good. Don't answer the question with a situation or a story, such as, I'm stressed because I have this big deadline and I can't meet it unless I stop sleeping for 3 days. Stressed is not an emotion. It's a general word that represents many different emotions, and I've found that it's not particularly helpful for what we're doing here. Nor is it helpful to get into the why of what you're feeling, which is the rest of this sentence of, because I have the big deadline and I can't meet it unless I stop sleeping for 3 days. What you don't want to do in this moment as you're asking the simple question of what do I feel and naming that feeling is to also try and name the source of the feeling. Meaning you don't want your next question after you name the feeling to be, why am I feeling this? Don't go there. Why? Because the question of why am I feeling this is what prompted the answer you see here for the situation on this slide. It forces you to tap into your thoughts or any other source of where the feeling could have come from. It will force you to then access some of your best friend thoughts that could have triggered the feeling, such as, oh, I'm sick of my job, or I'm upset about the fact that I don't have a partner. If that happens and you access those thoughts, you have now left our in-the-moment process to transform emotional eating because it's highly likely you'll then be off engaging in a negative loop of thoughts. And if you're there, you can't be here in your body, engaging with the feeling. And that's where you need to be to complete this process. Why the feeling came in does not matter in this moment. The thought that triggered it does not matter in this moment. The bigger problem in your life triggering all of this is not relevant right now, because the truth is that you can't solve that bigger problem right now anyway. You can't. But you can help yourself to break the feeling to food connection in this moment, and that's what we're here to do. So, practice that one-word answer to what am I feeling? Now we're into the magical final part of this third step, which is processing the emotion. This is where you do the exact thing you don't want to do, which is feel the feeling. The goal is to process the feeling in the most peaceful, healthy, and successful way possible. Healthy for you and healthy for anyone around you. To know how to do this, it's imperative to understand what emotion actually is. It's energy. E-motion. Energy in motion. It's only energy, and energy likes to move. It's not very happy when it gets stuck or trapped. I want to give you a metaphor to understand this concept of emotion, energy in motion, and why it's crucial to allow the energy to do what it naturally wants to do, which is flow, instead of trapping and stopping it, which is what many of us do. I call this the mind tunnel metaphor, and I made it up many years ago. Think of your mind as a tunnel. You know, those things where you're driving on the highway and all of a sudden you're now driving through a tunnel, literally. In this metaphor, your mind is the tunnel. There are cars coming in and out of that tunnel all day long. No one's putting them there or forcing them in. They just flow in and flow out. Because if the car is driving forward, it's going to flow right in and right out of that tunnel. In this metaphor, your thoughts and your emotions are the cars. Your mind is the tunnel, and your thoughts and emotions are the cars flowing in and flowing right out of that tunnel or that mind all day long. Now, a tunnel can have doors. The doors can be up or the doors can be closed, which would trap whatever's inside the tunnel. Your mind, as the tunnel, has the choice to keep your doors up or put your doors down. Most of the time your doors are up. That's just you living your life, hanging out, doors are up, cars are coming in and out all day long, and those cars, i.e. those thoughts and emotions, are just energy forms. Energy in motion, flowing in and out of your mind tunnel as they naturally do. You, the tunnel, the mind, have no control over which car comes in and out, or how often they come in and out, or what those cars are. They just do their thing and drive along. Thought comes in, thought goes out. Emotion comes in, emotion goes out. Unless you decide to shut the doors of your tunnel. You have the option, because you are a thinking, free-willed mind, to shut your tunnel doors. You can decide at any point that the tunnel doors are coming down, and whatever cars are in there are staying in there. So those thought and emotion cars are trapped because you shut your doors. Since they have nowhere to go, they're going to swirl around endlessly inside that tunnel. Now I'm stopping the metaphor here for now, but remember where we left off with thought and emotion getting trapped and swirling when we talk about the next concept in just a moment, which is riding the wave. So, feelings are energy in motion, and our goal is to feel and process them as healthfully and successfully as possible, with no need to eat as a result of it. To do this, we must face it head on and fully embrace it for what it is. This means we have to honor the emotion as just energy. That's the first step. Honor it for what it is. Then agree not to hold or trap it, and agree to let it do what it wants to do, which is to move, to flow in our bodies and out of our bodies in a natural rhythm. And that natural rhythm of emotion is a wave. So take a look at this diagram to let your mind have a visual for how this works. The feeling comes in here at the bottom. It starts to rise up like the wave that it is, it peaks, and it flows right back down, exiting out the same way it came in. Now here's the magic for how we can easily and with as minimal struggle as possible allow ourselves to feel and process this emotional wave. It's when we do these three things. First, we need to fully allow that wave to enter, to peak, and to exit as it wishes. This is what the emotion wants to do. It's energy in motion in the form of a wave. Looking back at the diagram here, we want it to enter, peak in its natural timing, which is when we feel it the most intensely, and then let that intensely release as it naturally loses strength from the peak and it falls down. So the goal is to feel the energy of the emotion in this wave with grounding, with mental peace, and with trust that this is what it's going to do. Then you can use your breath to naturally align with the intensity of the feeling. The breath should match it, where it's perhaps a little bit deeper and quicker with the wave peaking in intensity, and then it gets slower and longer as the wave starts to fall. Your breath will support this natural wave flow if you let it. So your job is to feel the feeling and ride the wave instead of deeply resisting it or fearing it, or even worse, trapping it in like the mind tunnel metaphor. You don't want to close your tunnel doors and trap that wave, because guess what it's going to do if you do that? It's going to swirl, and with nowhere to go, it'll build more velocity, running around and around in that tunnel, in your mind, in your body. That translates to you getting sucked into the deep intensity of that swirl, where anxiety may build in intensity for hours or maybe even days, or sadness can gain strength with the length of time it's trapped, and perhaps eventually even turn into more of a persistent condition like depression. So let the wave in and let it flow. No fearing it, no resisting it, no trapping. Now, the next thing you need to do to peacefully and successfully process this emotional wave is to keep yourself riding right above the wave as an expert surfer, instead of breaking the surface and getting sucked into that super strong, swirly undercurrent. To do this, it's necessary that you turn back to that pesky yet very important spiritual and psychological concept of awareness, which in this case means dual awareness. So we have two awarenesses here. Awareness number one, For the part of you that is the neutral body and soul vessel holding the energy of the emotion, that you are being the container in which this energy wave inhabits. Yes, one part of you is totally neutral in this scenario. It's the part that's just holding and watching this wave come in and out. And why is this true? Because you are not the wave. You're not. Ultimately, you're just the vessel holding this flowing energy wavy thing. The second awareness is for the part of you that is indeed interacting with this thing because you are feeling it. This second part of your dual awareness is merging with the wave, and it becomes tangible in the form of a feeling. So the goal is to ride that thing like the expert surfer that you are, right above it, while remembering your dual awareness. You are not the emotion. Ultimately, you are just a container for it, but you also do indeed interact with it, so it's important to let yourself not get sucked in under it. And the third thing that needs to happen to healthfully, peacefully, and successfully process this feeling is to stay the hell out of your head. It's nasty up there. All kinds of self-sabotaging thoughts are happening, especially right about now when you're riding that wave. You may have doomsday and despair thoughts going, thoughts about your past, thoughts about trying to figure out why that emotion came in the first place. It's like a battleground in that head. Stay out. First of all, there's just no way you can stay centered with and connected to these emotional processing steps if you're also trying in the same moment to engage with the battleground of thoughts. This process requires a deep connection to the present moment and being in your body. Getting into your head will definitely take you out of your body and out of the whole process. Secondly, I guarantee you're not going to solve anything right now. Meaning, right now, with that emotional wave taking form, you are not going to be able to successfully solve your problems. Your head is not going to figure anything out right now as to how to fix a problem in your life. So don't try. Stay out and instead just focus on steps 1 and 2 of allowing the wave to enter, peak, and flow out, and grounding into your dual awareness. So now, let's deal with resistances, because I have a feeling your active mind might have some. A very valid concern you might be thinking right about now is that you're just not sure if you can do this. Not sure if you can allow and ride that emotional wave as I've described. And maybe you don't trust that doing all that will actually stop your eating as a response to emotion, which was the whole point of all this. If you're thinking this after learning this process for what to do, which we just went through, I can understand, and I empathize with that, as I did not believe it either. The reason you might have resistance to allowing the emotion to ride the wave is fear. Fear of feeling and trusting that the feeling is indeed only a wave of energy. Here's a question to ask yourself. Do you believe if you let those feelings in that they're never going to go out? This might resonate to you as something like, whew, I don't want to feel those feelings because I think I'm going to die under them. I think they're going to swallow me whole and I'm going to be swirling in a vortex of painful emotion for a very long time. It is completely understandable if you feel this way. I know I certainly did for many, many years. And from what I've seen, this is just the common collective primal fear when it comes to feelings. That fear of, oh, if I surrender to this, if I don't try to fight it or change my state, I will never get out. Well, in my experience, what happens in real life is that if you dive in and truly allow that wave to happen and flow with whatever intensity it's going to happen in the moment, the timing of this will surprise you. It won't take you as long as you think. The fear is that you could be in this for hours, but I was shocked to learn that my therapist was really right when she taught me this process, because the average time this whole business of emotional processing takes is usually under 5 minutes, and she said even under 3 minutes. The next wave will come when it comes, and it'll come, and you will have to deal with it exactly the same way when it comes. But It will not consume your whole day to do this. Each wave is not going to last for hours. And then you come out of the wave and come back to neutral, and it's over. Being in a neutral state is not going to fuel cravings or the desire to eat if you're not hungry. Being neutral is peaceful. The drive to eat truly, easily, and naturally is just not there because now there's no emotion to be in response to it that fuels it. So you've avoided that urge to eat by engaging with this process. The irony, the absolute paradox of this fear is that if you don't actually feel your emotions, if you keep yourself in a cycle of struggle against them, of bracing against them and trying to avoid them, or covering them, or pushing them down, or closing your tunnel doors and trapping them, you will feel like they never leave, which is maybe what you feel like right now. It is this struggle, this bracing against and avoiding, that fuels your emotional eating. So to end emotional eating, and therefore end emotional overeating, which is our primary goal here, please learn and practice this process and trust that the space you're left in afterward is a space that genuinely doesn't need or want food. And that, my friends, is true peace. That's being out of your food war. So with that, I leave you with this process for ending emotional eating. The action guide is going to give you a snapshot of this to help you ground into it and use it sort of like a cheat sheet. Truly, the power in this is learning it and practicing it. Please let me know how you're doing with this in the Facebook group, and please show up on the monthly call because we can certainly talk about it there.